right, come on in. You're getting in. Welcome. Big talk. Big welcome. FinOps X Europe. Welcome to Jan Simon.
All right, thank you, Joe, for the warm welcome, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Nice crowd. First of all, public sector, I think was the title mentioned in the agenda, so don't get confused here on the title on the slide here. But challenge accepted. It's not the easiest part in the belonging to the public sector. To work with procurement in the cloud, to actually enabling cloud and then staying in those contracts with the cloud. But let's see how what we've done in the recent years to procure the cloud, to stay with the cloud, and keep up to date with any contracts. As any good German, first of all, some structure. I want to talk today about our cloud journey at RheinEnergie, and then coming to the actual procurement challenge. So where does the challenge actually lie in this public sector, and then thinking about doing infrastructure in the cloud. And then also the public bidding process. I will come to that in a second and explain that topic. And then start with the FinOps involvement and why it's necessary to start with FinOps when you start about procuring the cloud in the public sector. And then we'll have a look at the reseller market and then see what our solution to the question, how do you procure public cloud, will do, and then we'll do a brief outlook. All right, first of all, RheinEnergie, probably a company nobody here has heard of, but local energy provider from Germany for the Cologne and Rhineland region. That means we have around 2.5 million customers. This mainly 1.5 million sit in Cologne and the rest is around the region, and also some B2B customers as well, such as Ford, for example. They have a big factory in Cologne and are one of the biggest corporate customers. We belong to the whole city of Cologne, so we're actually local community owned, which means we have some in our corporates some more conglomerates, such as the KVB, there, for example, does the public transport or waste management in the middle, AWB, and some more stuff. Net Cologne is for public internet and telephone, etc. But we mainly focus on electricity, heating, gas, and any form of other facilitation of energy sources. We have around nearly 3,000 employees, and as part of the energy sector have a high revenue system, which is then in the public sector definitely low margin. But we provide the primary energy, so every time we belong to the critical infrastructure in Germany, which is definitely necessary and has to withstand any additional shakedowns in crises such as Corona pandemic, COVID pandemic, or in the recent years the energy crisis. 1 second about myself. Just as much as FinOps values practice over theory, that's the same that I did with my studyship. So I did a dual studyship, which means that you study while you work. So that means you can combine theory and practice directly on a daily basis. And I think this is also where what FinOps has it at its heart. And really think that this one can be applied to also some of you guys personally. So one question, how do you actually become a FinOps engineer at RheinEnergie with a company that does all the IT for the city of Cologne with around 170 people, 200 people, and Cloud Competence Center only with 4 people. Not at free will, I can say that, and by coincidence. But as soon as I finished my dual studyship, the team lead of the Cloud Competence Center asked, we need someone who's good with numbers and who can kind of take that workload, one of the existing team members, to have a look, because we were kind of progressing in the cloud and spending more and delivering more value for some business applications, and we needed a dedicated person to look at this. So let's have a look at RheinEnergie's cloud journey. So first of all, as good Germans, we do a cloud readiness analysis before we do anything. So we first ask ourselves, are we even ready for that? And then our overall goal with our cloud journey was to implement and optimize cloud-based technologies to the company and introduce them and enable them for teams, and come from inflexible infrastructure solutions that we host on-premise to transform them into layer-based, hybrid and optimized infrastructure in our portfolio. And of course, in the energy market, you have constantly changing requirements, and that's what we kind of wanted to address with our cloud strategy and also infrastructure portfolio. So starting with this cloud readiness analysis, we then moved forward with our first cloud strategy 1.0, and directly from the beginning thought of our multi-cloud environment, as this enables us to kind of have a look at different cloud service providers and then see for each specific workload where is it more expensive or even more cost-wise to move specific workloads, and also address different architectural topic, as different cloud providers have a different portfolio towards different services. Later on, we also, as good Germans, did some data protection conformity by a big law firm in the region, to get everything, by paper and compliant with our internal affairs. And this is kind of where we then also kicked off our cloud community, which then enabled us in the IT department to really enable more platforms and business applications to move forward. Next, we, over the years, were honored with some best practice awards from a national paper, and also some awards for most innovative customers. But this then led more over the years. In 2023 is actually then the time when we started also with our Cloud Competence Center, not only as a whole group, but also then added the department of FinOps, where then I play the role of the FinOps engineer, and then moved back to the cloud strategy and did a completely redo, where we moved from cloud first strategy back to a cloud fit. So we actually only for a while made cloud native applications when we thought they might fit, and then moved back to a cloud first strategy where we say, okay, anything new will be done cloud native. And therefore coming now to our current cloud setup at our company. This is our cloud foundation, how we call it. So this is what all our internal IT engineers see and move towards. We have some tenant orchestration and IAM policy at the top, then have different tooling such as security, a learning environment with on-demand lectures, some networking and some infrastructure as code tooling as well. And then there's the layer where we enable FinOps. So we pull all data together from the cloud service provider. We are multi-cloud, as I mentioned, with AWS, Azure and GCP. And at the moment still have direct contracts with nearly all of them. GCP today, we also already have a reseller, but I'll mention that setup later again. So now coming to the procurement challenge. Why is it harder for some people to procure the cloud? In the public sector, and especially as we are here in the EU region, Barcelona, Spain, and we from Cologne in Germany, we face EU regulations when it comes to spending in the public sector. So there are different thresholds upon which we then have to do a public bidding process. That means that we have to talk to the open market and say, okay, we are looking to get some cloud workloads to actually go into the clouds. This is where then we later look at the reseller solution and actually ask our question and to the market, who can provide this? And this is then actually what comes up in the process. So this is from the actual tenderizing platform provided by the EU, where you have to upload all your documents, and then everyone online, any reseller, any cloud solution provider can actually have a look online and what are the details, what is the consumption, is it worth it for business, what is the solution they're looking for. And then this actually took us a long time with also internally and to prepare all those documents. And I just briefly want to mention like the numbers. So for everything in the IT sector and delivering service contracts, anything above 443,000 euros over a period of 4 years has to be publicly, so has to be published to then for other people to make a bid on. This is for compliance and also transparency reasons in the public sector, as you might be familiar. And then maybe enabling us to then actually have a contract with one reseller that can then deliver us the service. Let's have a look at this bidding process as a whole. This kind of starts with, first of all, definition of service, which might sound intuitive. But it's not only where you say, okay, we want a reseller and then have a look and what comes with it, but rather explaining to our procurement department from an IT engineering perspective, what do we actually need? And this is where also, I think JR talked about it this morning, where this intersection of personas with the FinOps Foundation, FinOps framework comes into play. So what are we actually looking for? And this definition of service actually took us more than 6 months with our procurement department to get all those documents ready. So you can kind of get a feel what this regulatory process means for a company. That doesn't mean in the time in between that we have to stop with cloud and have to pause all the EC2 instances that we have, for example, but rather as an additional task to the daily business have to move forward in this direction. The bidding process can be done in different ways. For the contract choice, we have opted for some awarding procedure that works on a 50-50 basis for price and quality. So we have some qualitative criteria that we can set for the reseller that wants to make a bid for this, so that offers us a contract, and also then 50% price. I think that's the minimum amount you have to take. So we actually wanted to not only get the cheapest solution in general, but also the most fitting one. This is the one you can then control over the qualitative criteria. But in general, the agreement was shaped that we have a cloud spend on a yearly basis, but wouldn't in the contract add to the contract capacity commitment, so that we are kind of flexible in moving workloads in the cloud, even around different clouds. So maybe we at the future don't only have multi-cloud with 3 service providers, but maybe only 2, which then offers us more flexibility. I already said that the definition of service took around 6 months with the procurement department, and the kind of EU has a statistic that in theory can be done with this process in 5 to 6 months. If only getting the documents ready already took 6 months, you can kind of get a feeling on how long it will take us. So the reality kind of lies in between 12 and 18 months. Next, I kind of want to highlight the procurement persona. I already talked about this when we spent so much time with them together, and what kind of challenges they faced, or let's say what our experience has been, what their persona per se has to cope with. And this is definitely some of the more basic stuff, the variable cost model of the cloud. I believe you're all familiar with that one, but also the CSP setup. So different cloud providers have different marketplaces that have a different billing structure, for example. And for example, the AWS marketplace is a bit split. This is also for us as a German company. I think AWS in Europe does its billing from Luxembourg, but all the marketplace from AWS actually happens from the US. So that actually means we get an US bill without any tax information. That's the part then what we have to do. And where some different processes internally with controlling and finance actually then start with only starting to procuring the cloud. But these challenges can be coped with some strengths of the procurement persona at our company. Market and compliance knowledge, that's actually where the IT engineering competence and also the procurement competence then come together, where they have a deep market knowledge, and also with the reseller market, for example, and also with the vendor management, where you then have direct correlation and contacts maybe in that area throughout the public cloud sector in Germany and Europe, and it can leverage those contacts. So let's now talk about the FinOps involvement. Why is it important that we start with FinOps when we start procuring the cloud? I think you all remember this famous quote, if security is job 0, FinOps is 0.5. Let's say for today in the public sector, FinOps comes first, finally. And not the second part, but actually the first one. Because in the procurement of the cloud, any commercial success is also FinOps success, and at the end also company success. At this part, when procuring the cloud, you don't have to think about security as a first. So this is why in this discussion, when procuring the cloud, FinOps comes first. And this is so important to actually start this process, to actually think about FinOps processes that you have connected to the billing of the cloud and also cost allocation that is done by the CSP individually, or even the reseller that you have in place today, or any external party. you actually have to think about this process before you award a contract to any of the future resellers. So you have to start before the first euro or US dollar is billed to us. And this is where you have to set up this practice in also the contract that you're then awarding to the future reseller, that you kind of need to look, how is your grouping of CSP looking in your cost allocation and showback, chargeback, and kind of get that process starting when getting the first bill from the future reseller. But at our company, this is where the FinOps practitioner within the different personas stays at bay and stays in the middle of the process. And this is where one of my colleagues, who is also part of the Cloud Competence Center at our company, has this one quote that I quite like, where the FinOps and engineers the translator between IT, procurement, finance, and business. So enabling this kind of communication between all those different departments actually has a huge role for our company. How much of you guys have spoken to a finance and procurement persona in the last week? Hands up. I would say half of it. How much of you talk about on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis? Let's say that. Hands up. That's the other half. Let's say that. I believe I think on a daily basis I speak to finance and procurement powers at our company. This is how much intercommunication we have at our company. On a daily basis, we have a touch point talking about different challenges that we face on a daily basis, kind of also doing some preparation for the end of the month for the billing process, or even getting some new purchase orders out so that there's at least enough budget, let's say, for the next couple of months. And this is where I kind of want to highlight also the FinOps persona, which has different challenges. So again, also this variable cost model of the cloud and currency and exchange rate. For us as a German company, also public sector in Germany, it's not common to have some contracts within the US. So I mentioned the AWS Marketplace bill, which comes in US dollar. I think that's only one of the 3 US bills that we get. So this is from the start from procuring the cloud was a huge topic, and again now is a huge topic when looking for a new vendor. And also the volatility of billing. This is when marketplace offers, for example, expire mid-year, and also some of the end of the year and some of the billing of the year, and some of them you pay in advance and some are paid on a monthly basis. This is where this communication is then needed. But I will also talk about strengths of the finance persona that we have at our companies. I want to mention pettiness, which might sound a bit badly, but this is actually where one of the key strengths of a finance persona, so controlling, actually comes in. Because we had once in our AWS bill, the big usage bill, is 7 cents different in what the tax amount, so the 19% tax that we have was. And I think any one of you, when a finance controlling persona comes to you with a 7 cents difference, you would say, who cares, right? But at this point, this was more about the compliance stuff, because our ERP tool actually calculated something else. And this is then when we actually found out that it's actually legal to also do the 19% tax on a line-based item on the bill and not aggregated at the total sum. And this is then when AWS actually, when on each line item there's like 16 places behind the point, and actually comes up with a sum, and then of course there's some rounding error, and on a huge AWS bill this comes up to 7 cents. I've talked to Rob before, his was 15 cents difference, so I think he won that challenge. But this is then actually where this pettiness and also persistence of the finance persona actually helps with actually finding some new explanation why things are differently for different cloud providers. Let's look now at the reseller market, which actually then tries to answer the question, why is it so difficult in the public sector to procure the cloud? And of course, we are German after all. We did a survey before. So before starting anything, we get an external report on how to do things. And this is where we get market data and kind of can already talk to potential vendors before actually starting that billing process. This is where you actually then start to validate this definition of service that we have done over 6 months with the procurement department, and then actually can validate and even add features after with our documentation that is then uploaded and made public on this tenderizing process. But this is then where you can actually, first of all, have talks with those vendors, and if it's even possible, what is like the market average and like the market normal market setup for these kind of contracts, and also can then define upon these conversations some criteria to award qualitative criteria, and then also get a feeling on what to judge different vendors when they have different solutions to your problem. And this is also where we started to design a price sheet for the commercial evaluation. So at the end, this is where a reseller then adds some value, can also charge for this kind of service of facilitating and procuring the cloud for us as RheinEnergie, but also then can offer some discounts as well. And this is where we then, after all, came up with these specific criteria that made it into the documentation. So we wanted a vendor that could offer AWS, Azure, and GCP, so could facilitate our multi-cloud strategy. And at a later stage, of course, could offer even more CSPs if we wanted to, for example, also wanted to implement some more German, so more local European cloud vendors, which would make sense in, for example, in a sovereign cloud context. And this is also where we wanted to not only have vendors that done this the first time, but also wanted some different references from those vendors to actually get some talk started with them, how their feeling was with working together with this vendor. And we actually found out that some different support capabilities would come in handy with different vendors. And this is where we also have some different support processes that have to be implemented at a later stage to actually make this possible in a CSP and then also reseller context. And of course, Germans like their ISO standards, that's needed to be added as well. So some quality management and also IT security. But let's now have a look at the reseller benefits. So what does it actually bring additional value when you use a cloud vendor or a reseller in procuring the clouds and don't have any direct contracts with the CSPs? So coming from this mindset of a single pane of glass, I think this is from the inform phase of the FinOps framework, actually now for us becomes a single pane of contract, what I call it, a SPOC, and where we only have one contract with the reseller, and the reseller then has his agreements with all the CSPs in the background. And we actually don't have any correlation then to the CSPs altogether, but rather have this all consolidated into one bill and one contract. And this is also where the reseller then enhances for us the CSP bill for better cost transparency. This is where I said those different FinOps processes can start with this contract, and also the cost allocation for us now will be enabled at the billing level, so we can kind of already see at the bill where on an internal cost structure we use ITSM tooling for that. So we have different internal services that are then our cost centers for our cloud applications, and can leverage that upon the bill through the help of the CSP, the reseller, and then further upon the CSP. This actually enables us to have decreased procurement and controlling efforts, as I mentioned earlier on. This is on a monthly basis a task that we have to do, and then kind of validate the bill together with the finance person to actually then starting the payment process towards the CSPs. And this is then where we have at the beginning like 4 or 3 bills coming in each month. We only have 1, and therefore reducing the overall effort as well. I also want to mention some capabilities that come when working together with a reseller. So this is some rate optimization, of course. The cost allocation, I already mentioned this. FinOps tooling and services. So we enable actually, this works then as an extended workbench together with the cloud reseller from our own FinOps department, and then also enabling those kind of invoices and chargeback capabilities. But now coming to the most interesting part of any reseller business, the commercial aspects. This is where you actually have the biggest impact, coming with some discounts. And this is, I think, where all of us are interested in, not only working with saving plans and reserved incidents, but also getting a discount on committed spend or even uncommitted spend in our case. So the partner status of any reseller enables you as a customer to have different so CSP specific discounts, for example, for AWS, Azure and GCP, and then also consolidates all the support. This is even required in a reseller context with Microsoft Azure, where the reseller has to hold the first level support for all your CSP subscription, so all your Azure tenants. And this is where also some additional services with the CSP then can be enabled to have this cloud agnostic, so also for the different other CSPs such as Google and AWS. And we also combined this reseller business that we awarded on the public EU tenderizing website, also with some consultancy. So actually coming from a one-hand solution, so kind of one sourcing strategy, getting this combined with consultancy, and therefore also streamlining the effort in procurement, getting some cloud architects or even engineer solution architects from that same reseller that already knows our infrastructure, because they are our reseller, then actually getting this competency also through the same contract lowers for us also the procurement effort on the engineering side. Now let's have a look at the future CSP setup. So already mentioned in the beginning our setup at RheinEnergie when we weren't having this reseller in place, and this is where this additional layer then comes in. So the reseller sits right after the CSPs, getting all this billing information together, consolidating it into one bill, and then pushing this data into our FinOps processes and then enabling us on our normal processes. And then also, of course, the engineering part and also cloud enablement part stays the same for all the engineering staff, so they still have the same entry door into their AWS accounts, Azure subscriptions and GCP projects. So for them, actually nothing changes, but rather only the procurement part changes through the reseller business. This is where we then have this centralized billing enabled. I already talked about this one reseller, one contract and one bill added capability. And actually also some shared responsibility with the reseller can therefore happen, because we don't actually hold any contracts with the hyperscalers anymore, and therefore enabling us to have some risk sharing as well. And this is actually where then the reseller choice even would make change without any EU regulations. So even if you're not public sector, this step might still make sense to you. I mean, we started with a fairly low cloud spending, and this is actually then enabling us, without commitment, to enable some more reseller discounts, kind of course started with some the obligation to do so, but now is actually enabling us to get this same discount to this process. So let's talk about those shared responsibilities. This risk sharing without having any contracts directly with the CSP, you can all have that consolidated into one contract that you have with the CSP, with the reseller vendor, and this kind of streamlines this whole process. Also the work sharing, I already talked about an extended workbench together with the reseller. And you also have this one-hand sourcing solution where you get all the consultancy, all the billing, and also all the procurement into one partner that you can work closely with, have some certainty in contract duration as well, and then can kind of, on a contract basis, award these to different companies. Just, I want to repeat the commercial benefits here, so the CSP discounts and also the consolidated contracts. And as I mentioned before, the billing and also cost allocation for us then happens on the billing level. So we have done that more reactively, the cost allocation after the bill got to us, and then allocating the different costs towards our cost centers. And now this is then pushed onto the cloud bill, where all our ITSM structures then pushed into this cloud bill, and having this at this level kind of enables also our ERP tooling to handle this cost allocation part. So we have some more integration towards our company processes. And when working with a reseller, you can also add some additional services. These consultancy, where you can get some cloud solution engineers to work on cloud projects. So even if your cloud competence center team or even your infrastructure team isn't big enough to handle bigger workloads, you can kind of get that already through that reseller partner business, because they always have a whole department set up for this kind of business. Some managed service, this is also what we learned a lot of them offer. So any managed services by those companies where they control and then also manage the whole, let's say, grouping of AWS accounts where you run a specific workload or business application, they can do that completely for you and put it on the same bill. So for you on a sourcing perspective, it all stays the same. Support, I already mentioned that for Azure it's kind of necessary to do this, with the first level support, but you can also book some additional services. So I believe for AWS they offer mostly some premium support on the same price that is the basic support, with AWS coming as standard. This kind of is enabled by their status, partner status with AWS, and is some nice addition to also the commercial aspects. So now let's have a look at the outlook for what is in our FinOps journey at RheinEnergie. We will then closely work with the reseller in setting up the service and billing integration and enhancing those FinOps capabilities at billing level, and then working upon this level more deeply. Optimizing reporting with ITSM, I already talked about that. Our cost allocation works with our ITSM model, and this is where actually some more leverage then can be put internally to get some more cost awareness across our IT department. Coming now to the optimization phase for our journey, we will work on some more assessments. I mean, working closer with some of those resellers, they offer this service as well, and can always kind of give you a different feeling on how different players in the market, especially for us in the energy market, can kind of compare to. And then some long-term operations. Of course, we want to work on our continuous improvement, and then furthermore setting up some more commercial targets upon those CSP discounts that are enabled to actually improve our value proposition as a FinOps team. All right, thank you very much. This is the part where I think Joe will hand over to any questions.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions?
Is there a minimum threshold of costs?
Pardon?
Is there a minimum threshold of costs when it makes sense to a reseller or a reseller?
Well, I think there isn't a per se threshold. I mean, for us in the public sector, it's kind of set by someone else. But I think even at an early stage when starting would make sense, because they have some competency that you can leverage. So when you are a small enterprise, maybe your cloud competence center or CCOE, whatever you call it, only consists of 1 or 2 people, and they kind of, need some additional knowledge. I think this is where you can also leverage some reseller knowledge in that part, and then also working together with the CSPs, of course. They have some favorites, and then you can kind of work together with them as well. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do 1 and then 2.
Thanks. Does the consolidated billing offer additional difficulty to do right sizing and stuff, or does it make it easier?
I mean, it is definitely possible to kind of outsource that task of right sizing and leveraging savings potential to that reseller. This is what they also offer with this managed service. So we can have that account specific or like company, let's say organization wide for the different CSPs. But in general, that's a task that we want to keep, because that enables us to have some more control, and also not offering them too much right permissions in our environments.
Yeah, two quick questions. You mentioned you are doing no commitment, so no reservation, no selling plan. I wonder if it's coming from the regulation, from public sector, or if it's a choice of the company, the cost of staying flexible. And the second one is about SLA. How does it work if there is a SLA breach, if you want to claim money back? Do you talk to the reseller or to the cloud provider?
So this is then where actually this positive impact of only having the contract partnership with the reseller. So everything upon the bill is only with the reseller. So we still have this option to have some, we call it account management meetings with the reseller itself, where they provide us with some new services that may come up and may be added and maybe also about different applications. And in use case specific, but in general, anything billing correlated is then handled only with the reseller. So this is actually where I think Microsoft Azure actually is pushing towards that models, that smaller enterprises move to that partner model, and of course the bigger companies, they want to keep them themselves and having a direct contract, and therefore then take care of those support questions or billing questions themselves.
Just one question. Maybe I missed this, but can you maybe expand on which activities in FinOps are done by the reseller and which ones are like kept in-house and done by you and the team?
So what we have focused the reseller capabilities in that part is only the billing part. So getting all those bills consolidated into one bill that is sent over to us on a monthly basis. This is like from FinOps process or capabilities, the only part that we wanted to be done externally, because of course that's also the main part what the reseller business is doing. But we wanted to have some more flexibilities and any follow-up FinOps processes together, and then actually work together with the reseller on any follow-up activities. Yeah. I think there's one behind you, Joe.
One behind me.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. One question. Do you check the invoice of the reseller as opposed to the, let's say, billing consoles of the public cloud providers?
Yeah, so what, of course, to kind of validate the reseller bill that we get at the end of the month, we still need to have a look at the billing console of each CSP, for example. And this is where, as one of the criteria for our contract model, it is necessary to also have access to the curve file itself, so the one that also the reseller then uses for billing us, because otherwise you don't really have the chance to validate anything they have on their bill, but rather only looking at the cost explorer. And then this is where we have this kind of two workflows. So they have their data stream from the curve file, let's stick with AWS on that one, to their billing part, but we also get the same information into our FinOps tooling to have some to have a comparison on that part. Yeah.
And when you tender the discount price, you have one unified discount for all three CSPs or different?
It's differently. So for each CSP, it's a unique one. So, for example, we are a bit AWS heavy, so we have more spending there, so they can offer a bigger discount there. But this also varies over the years, because no one can guarantee any discounts in, let's say, 5+ years. So we have kind of made them to stick with them for the first few years, and then can kind of open some contract discussions about the following years.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you tender 4 years contract or longer contract?
We opted for a longer contract with like the option from our side to extend that one, just because we don't want to redo this process with the whole EU regulations every 2 years. So that's why we opted for a longer contract duration.
For undefinite period of time, or
Pardon?
For undefinite period of time, or
no, you can't do that. I think the maximum by regulation is 8 years you can do. I think we done a basis of 5 years, and then can extend on a yearly basis up on 8 years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow up on that. So if you're in a public sector, I'm pretty sure, being in the cloud, you also have to have an exit plan, and then you have a 4-year plan. So how do you reconcile that?
So there's actually a dedicated document in all those regulation parts, which is called exit management, which has been also in the talks with the vendors, one of the biggest discussion points. because we kind of make it necessary for them to actually work with us when transitioning to a new reseller. So there actually is a period defined when we say, okay, contract ends, either on a natural basis or to something else. And we actually make them transition this whole business towards the future reseller that, of course, lies in our choice. And this is also one of the biggest discussion points with talking with the reseller. And what we have learned actually, when you actually start with the reseller model with Azure, you can't move back to the enterprise agreement. So once you work with a reseller, you have to stay with at least one reseller, or even a new one then. But for us in the public sector, once you move into that category and have to make it a public bidding process, you will end up with a reseller anyways. And this is where at least the market is so diverse enough to have those jump in place just quickly enough.
Just wondering, how does the billing that you get from the reseller compare to what the actual CSPs provide? And second to that, are they going down the focus route as well to provide that?
Yeah, so one of the criteria that we have actually made as well, that any reseller that wants to bid on that process has to actually comply with the focus data, so that we, upon then further FinOps processes, can actually use the data as well. And so it doesn't differ from the ones offered by the CSPs as well.
So is the level of detail comparable between?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. That's our goal, to have the same quality of data, even if it's done by the reseller. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have two comments before I let you all go. The first comment is, I've only ever worked in the private sector. In public sector challenges sounds so incredibly painful, but like so necessary for everyday life. So I applaud and thank all of you for doing that. And this is really insightful for me. I learned a lot listening. And I also want to thank all of you for your questions, because your questions unlocked even more insights in learning for me. So thank you all. I learned a lot from this, and I work here, so that's great. The second announcement I have before we give Jan a huge round of applause is, if you go right across the hall, we have refreshments, food and drink for all of you to get refreshed for a great night of networking. And with that announcement, please give Jan a large round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X Europe content on our YouTube channel playlist. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and leave comments and questions for speakers to help our channel. We appreciate your support.